Well,
thank you. It's great to be here. Well, you can't beat a fine day in the Wairarapa, can you? I'm about to say that. Oh, no, come on, guys.
of course you are.
It's a good day over here. I had no trouble coming over here from good old Wellington. So, look, welcome to the meeting, folks. It is good to be here. Caleb, to meet you for the first time, literally, although we've spoken a wee bit over the phone. And we will be following up today's meeting with a short workshop on our strategic risks. For various reasons, the busyness and what have you of council have been asked to keep that reasonably short. So I hope to keep to time broadly a couple of hours for this meeting, and then we'll break and then have about an hour for the workshop, which I think means that we'll be finished more or less by 3:30. On that basis, I've taken a commitment at 3:45, so I've got some personal compulsion, Martin, to actually get out or leave you guys in peace. We are recording the meeting, as I think you would fully understand, and it's being live streamed. You folk know the health and safety in this place better than I do. I can see an exit sign there, and I presume there's an exit sign there. So please be sensible should the worst happen. Karakia, sorry, I should have noted that. Would somebody be prepared to lead us while I suggest we do join in with Martin on the Karakia? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa panawi te moana, he hura hi ma tātou e te rangi nei, aroa atu, aroa mai, tātou ia tātou katoa, ui e ai.
Thank you, Martin. It's tremendous. Right, do you have any apologies for today at all, Amy?
Aidan?
Aidan?
Aidan, I think
Let me go through my list. Martin, what's this here? Alistair's here.
I don't think I've gotten anything from Karen.
Karen, yes, is Karen here? Okay, I wonder if we could sustain an apology from Karen and from Aidan. Is that correct? You thought he was going to be?
No, he's on Australia.
Oh, he's online.
No, that's Karen.
Yeah, Karen's there.
No, he's on holiday in Australia, I think.
Okay, so we need to recognise that he is an apology as well. I'll move from the chair. We sustain those apologies. Have a second, please. Thank you, Martin. Motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. We've got from Karen a very good wide-ranging agenda. Are there any matters there that you need to declare an interest for? Being none, I'll move on. And welcome Mr. Anderton to the meeting. Thank you for being here. I understand you'd like to make have a public participation with us. I understand the rules of council here. Mr. Anderton, 5 minutes. I suspect you know those situations. Amy will raise her hand with a minute to go. And your choice. I would encourage you to be sort of 3-ish minutes, and to encourage my colleagues to ask questions of you towards the end, if that's possible. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing I'm actually going to point out is I think it's quite Mickey Mouse that this committee's meeting after the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I've had 30 years experience as a chartered accountant. Never seen a structure set up that way. The fact that you're receiving the same reports that the Finance Committee's already received just makes no sense. Assurance audit committees should be there to do the donkey work on the financial statements, then pass it through a much abbreviated report through to the Finance Committee. I'm also raising the fact that I consider that the reports that the council officers provide are very substandard, and I have provided other examples with that. I also feel that there is a lack of expertise, and that's not actually a personal criticism of the council members around the table. It's what you get when you have, with a school board of trustees or council, you don't necessarily get to actually choose people with all the right skills. Any board would sit and do a matrix and work out where they've got legal, marketing, HR, and then collar people in if there's a gap. I'm highly critical of the last annual report that was adopted. It was presented to you guys dated the 6th of June and had the former CEO's signature on it. He left a month earlier. I do not know how you were able to sign off a clean statement of compliance when the report missed the statutory deadline for publication of 30 November. The auditors had even added a special paragraph in their own report, the very next page, saying it was not completed in the time frame. And Audit New Zealand have assured me they recommended to the South Wairarapa Council officers that they should be putting an equivalent paragraph in the statement of compliance. Because I've done this already, I feel it's fairly redundant, but as I say, the Assurance Committee should be happening before the Finance Committee. I cannot understand why no committee has actually seen any financial reports covering the current financial year. You're through the first quarter, and have you actually seen how the current council operating is going? You haven't. I don't know why this committee's only been provided the draft annual financial statements and not the full annual report with all the other commentary, the statement of service performance, or whatever it's called these days. You're supposed to have it published by the 30th of November, and now you're only looking at some document on the 22nd of November. If my pool doesn't meet the requirements of bylaws, you come down on us ratepayers like a ton of bricks. When you miss your own statutory deadlines for what you're supposed to do, it just seems to be a shrug of the shoulders. And I will state that the draft financial statements that you have been provided with are significantly below par. You know, they've got the Maori translation of financial statements. It's not even spelt correctly on the title page. When you have a statement of cash flows that closing balances don't agree to the balance sheet, when net equity doesn't equal the balance sheet, I think you've got to be looking at yourselves and saying, why are we receiving these reports from council? In corporate world, I wouldn't even last till the next payday presenting something like this to a board of directors. There you go. If you're time to talk to me if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Appreciate your advice and really helpful for this committee to hear your views, given we're an audit and risk committee. Members, I understand you might have already spoken with Mr. Hamilton, but do you have any questions for him at this stage? Being none, it's my role to thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for your comments. This is a time to raise questions about fact, not to debate with you, so I appreciate your views.
No, you are allowed to debate if it's on the agenda, and that's what I presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I appreciate your presentation. That's been good. Right. There is a question about whether there's any action that follows through from that. My personal view, and I've taken notes from Mr. Anderton and his comments, we will get to the key items on the agenda, which I would appreciate councillors' views, and also would note that if there are broader matters, we have our workshop later on this afternoon. Okay, happy with that? Great.
I have one matter that arises.
Sorry, yes.
I would appreciate maybe an email to all councillors from the Chief Executive on why we have not seen financial reports on the current year.
I think that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Any other matters or points we'd like to raise? Right, can I go to extraordinary business? I don't think we have notification of any extraordinary business, so that is fine, thank you. That then gets us to the confirmation of the minutes. Our last meeting was like a long time ago now, 9th of August, lots happened since then. So I'll move from the chair that we accept them as a true and correct record. I have a second. Thank you, Alistair. Are there any comments on accuracy or correction that need to be recorded? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Well, welcome, Karen. I think being all the way from Auckland today, so nice to have you here. You already heard me say it's nice here in the Wairarapa weather-wise. I hope it's the same your way, Karen.
I think I'm just admitting.
Sadly, no.
Sorry?
I'm just admitting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay, Karen. Sorry, Amy was just indicating that you were being admitted.
No, the other Carol.
Oh,
Oh, the
another
other,
Karen.
the other Karen. I've got Karen and Karen. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
My eyesight needs to be fixed, I think, Karen. Karen, look, we've got a series of reports from you. I wonder if you would be prepared to give us salient points before I invite the committee to raise questions and respond.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're presenting the draft financial results as at the 30th of June, 2023. These results have been worked through with councillors in a previous meeting to describe some of the detail and information that's contained in these reports. They are still draft as the final audit is still continuing. So even though these financial reports were sent to Audit New Zealand on time in August, we are still waiting for their full review. The adjustments we are expecting to receive are above the line. There would be some minor changes. And below the line, we have yet to account for fair value assessments on all of the infrastructure assets and the impairments that came through late during the audit. So those items would come into the financial statements below the line, and we don't believe there are any material impacts on the draft results at this stage. Those draft results have been published in the annual report for information and will be changed when the final audit is completed and the financial statements are redrafted, along with the funding impact statements and the key performance indicators that make up the total annual report. The entire annual report was not available in time for these meetings, and they will be available for over the next couple of weeks and for adoption that is due on the 22nd of November. Any questions on the draft financial results?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, Melissa.
Thank you, Karen. Just following up on from Mr. Anderton's public presentation, the inaccuracies and editing that's required in the text part of the annual report, and you touched on the process for the numbers, but who is responsible for that level of editing and improvement from draft to final report, Karen?
So the finance team are responsible for the entire finance section, including all the funding impact statements and the non-financial KPIs. And then the entire document gets proofread by either someone internally, or in this case, it will be external due to resourcing issues.
Thank you.
And finally, it will be endorsed by the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other questions? No. Okay, any other questions from folk here? I am interested, Karen, in process, and I just think perhaps it would be worthwhile checking that, because clearly they've come at an interim stage, and as you've indicated, over the next 2 weeks, the full annual report will be popular, at least collated. I think you indicated that that sounds like it's virtually done, but obviously not at the stage of this meeting, which is so we've agreed with Audit New Zealand, Jack, that the adoption of the annual report and the receipt of the draft audit opinion would be on the 22nd of November, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So that does mean that we need to look, we need to anticipate what is the role of this committee in providing clearance to council that actually the matters have associated with the audit of the annual report have been cleared. That can be done reasonably easily. Dare I say it can be done remotely, given my movements. I think we just make certain that if we work back from an agenda day, when it would be logical for us to convene the risk committee and to hear from Jacques and be in a position to be able to recommend. I'll be looking for three things. I mean, obviously we need to clear the annual report. That's obvious. We need the letter of representation from the auditor, the one that he is asking Martin, and I suppose by that stage Paul's back, or was Janice on board? I can't quite recall. So she'll have an interesting challenge. It'll be a nice challenge for her to sign the letter of representation, and obviously to hear from Jacques on his proposed opinion. So that feels middle-ish of next month would be something that we should be anticipating as a committee, a level of work to do to fulfil our role and enable council to adopt on the 22nd. Okay, that's good. Let me think about the financial results that at this stage you want to draw out. Does it look like the financial results that you would have expected for the year? Can I ask that question?
There will be, we don't anticipate any material changes. The main change will be around the fair value assessments that have just been completed on the infrastructure.
Thank you, Karen. No, I do appreciate that, and you explained it well, and I appreciate that the bottom line will change, albeit you're indicating the operating surplus on page 10, which is the right column, which is $2.8 million.
Correct.
One that looks like it will be retained. We could have a reasonable change in terms of valuations, which comes below the line. I get that. That's fine.
And just on the fair value assessments, again, last year they went up significantly, about 38 million, and this year we're expecting them to increase again by about 32 million, all material changes. There will be impairments that have yet to be approved by Audit New Zealand before we can make those changes. So the two will be netted off and they're below the line of the 2.8.
Yes, appreciate that, and I think it reflects the challenge in terms of the LTP, Martin, and the financial strategy that at inflationary times, and I think it's fair to argue we moderately are at the moment, it actually adds to the value of our assets and therefore the cost of our depreciation, which we should be covering and funding. So it is difficult at this stage to plan adequately in a high inflationary period. I just come from a council where inflation added 50 million to depreciation, but suddenly find how to fund that's a challenge. So, you know, again, you would have struck that last year with the 38 million increase. We just need to be cognizant that as we finalise the accounts, the real work then has to start analysing what does this mean in conjunction with other information for our long-term planning and our financial strategy. I don't need to tell you that will be challenging.
Bruce, can I just add to that of course that is impacting our insurance premiums.
Yes.
Last year, our insurance, well, the insurance premiums for the 23-24 year, whilst they increased by 50% on dollar terms, half of that was attributable to our revaluations. So our insurance premiums increased on the same level of other councils, but we had quite a significant increase in our fair value assessments. So one of the things we're about to look at is our current strategies to fully insure and to look at the cost of that insurance.
Our renewal period, Karen?
Yes, it's the next point on the agenda, but for above ground assets, it's 1 July to 30 June, and with the LAP insurance below ground assets, it's 1st of November.
Yes, so some decisions will need to be made reasonably quickly, I guess is the key point I'm trying to reflect. You're going to have to strategise and make a decision reasonably quickly.
We have a workshop booked in a couple of weeks with our insurance broker to come and discuss the current market conditions and what we're facing, and to look at the options for council to consider.
Yeah. So you mentioned the 1st of November. So have you already placed what you want for this 1st of November? So we're talking 1 November 24.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. No,
For
that's
the LTP, yeah, the commencement
yes.
of the
Yeah.
LTP.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's very helpful. I think it makes sense to workshop and meet with your insurer. That's good to hear. Folk, any other comments folk would like to make? Rightio, there's some other aspects to your report, Karen. I suggest that we move on to that as well. Sorry, no, before I backtrack. So before I advance, let me backtrack. So we're adopting the 22nd, as I said, we need to work out how this committee fits in with that. When will councillors get their first chance to actually look at the full annual report?
I believe that date is in about 2 weeks' time. Sorry, Amanda, would you be? I think it was the 6th of November is the date we're hoping to have the complete draft. And we're waiting for Audit New Zealand to review the document as well.
No, I appreciate that. Look, no, that's good. I mean, that's, right up to the 22nd, that's good. It's just I'm very conscious that councillors need to reflect that this is their accountability, albeit it's a slightly odd year because, of course, you had the October elections, but I suspect nearly most of you are run through councillors. That's okay. But it is always important, particularly at the front end of the report, because the numbers will be the numbers, and they are coming through. It will be important that council have a wee bit of time to be able to provide feedback, particularly on the front end of the report. Martin, it's going to be you and sort of Paul/Janice that will have the important introduction. There'll be those critical few front pages which will form part of our summary, I suspect. And actually that needs to be a credible and focused part of the document, because that's probably the primary bit that our community will read, not wanting to exclude those that have a deeper interest and will look through every page in detail. The majority will look at the front few pages. So it'll be really important from the 6th, if that's the deadline, that councillors engage and make certain that they're comfortable this is reflecting the year they know and have experienced here at South Wairau. It's great. Sorry, that sounds a bit like a rant, but it's important to make certain we get ourselves lined up for the 22nd, which would be great. So, final chance for comments on the annual report? No? Okay. Can we move on, please, Karen?
Thank you, Bruce. Next topic is just reiterating and reconfirming that all of our insurance premiums have been received and paid for the coming year. At the last committee meeting, we had the Marshes renewal policies from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. And then at that point, we didn't have the local authority protection program insurance. That's since come in, it's all paid, and it is all in line with our budget. So the budget and the annual plan for 23-24 is completely on track. And I think we had 5,700 over what we had budgeted. So that was just to confirm back to councillors that we have allowed for the correct amount for our current insurance policies under our current full insurance strategy for the current year.
Thank you. So it does reflect significant increase in the way that you're saying, if you look at the bottom line.
Yes, and we discussed this at the last finance committee.
That's right.
And again, the reason for the significant increase is not just the market conditions, but also the increase in the valuation of our assets.
Right, folk, before we move on, any questions or comments for Karen? As she said, it's been known before, we've seen this before. We've recognised that we also discussed with the annual report the workshop will need to be looked at are there other tactics you can bring to control this cost? If there's any comfort, that's happening even within this region. How councils can try and manage what is quite frankly a pretty unhelpful set of rates and premiums moving up, which has to be expected, unfortunately.
And just to add to that, Bruce, we are with Marsh, the insurers, we are with a combined council group with Masterton and Carterton to enable to get the best out of all of our requirements.
It's not part of, well, unless it's directly related to one of our assets, but within the community, are insurers looking at reducing the nature of insurance on houses in the district? Do we know?
I don't think. Sorry.
No, you go for it, Karen.
They haven't indicated that yet, but what they did say is that there will be things insurers will not be insuring going forward.
Yes.
And we know, for example, cyber insurance is one of those.
Yep.
And they will be looking more closely at what they are willing to insure. And we will have that discussion shortly.
So we're just on that, in the district plan committee, we have had a long and detailed discussion about insurance and the impact of the mapping that's coming out of Greater Wellington Regional Council, particularly with regards to natural disasters, liquefaction, flooding. And we're pretty sure that the law of unintended consequences, if you make those maps part of your LIM report, for example, then all of a sudden it gives an insurance company an excuse not to insure.
Yes.
Because it's a known risk then. So we've had a lot of conversation about that and how we're going to manage that issue going forward.
Yes.
It's obviously going to affect us as well with some of our infrastructure as well.
Yeah.
So it's in the unknown what the insurance company will do yet, but you don't have to look too far to sort of make an educated judgment what they'll do.
Yeah. Look, that's really insightful. Thank you, Alistair. And it does, and I'm probably prefacing a discussion around risk and even this afternoon. But look, the general ability for the district to be insured becomes really important. You look at the events on the East Coast and with natural disaster and some of the impacts it has on local authorities, particularly if we suddenly find we had houses that might categorise Category 3, or more likely the cost of keeping people out of Category 3. Which comes back to not insurance, but it's not unrelated. There's a lot of risk here potentially.
The area that worries me the most, I think, is in the natural disaster area, where the decisions that have come out of the current government right now with the shared model they've done with council.
That's right. Has
placed a huge element of uncertainty. Like for a council like us, it would just be impossible to fund buying out people's properties. Mm-hmm. So it really surprised me that the councils of Auckland and Hawke's Bay didn't fight back with stronger. Because
don't anticipate that there wasn't an attempt at the meaningful negotiation, Alistair. But
when you look at Christchurch, for example, it was entirely funded by government. Now it's not, and certainly as a local council here, and I would imagine no council in the country has reserves sitting there that, or even borrowing capacity to buy out people's properties in the event of a disaster.
Radar heavily.
Well, it does. That'll certainly. One of our risks is climate change. So we probably need to start factoring our thinking around that. So we'll come to that a wee bit later.
So if I could I just ask Karen, part of the conversation we're going to have around insurance, I presume you're going to come to us with options for self-insurance as well. We're spending nearly $700,000 a year on insurance premiums. At what stage do we get to the stage that actually self-insurance, putting that money into reserves, becomes actually a better option than paying to a company so that we never see that money again? So I suppose that's that balance that we have to have that conversation.
Indeed, and that's the purpose of the workshop with our insurance broker to discuss some of those issues. As we know, self-insurance isn't necessarily cheaper, and it's to what level of risk do we wish to take on some of those things. So I will be asking them to come in and discuss that with you and allow you to understand some of those implications. but for sure,
Thank you.
self-insurance is one of them, and no insurance is obviously another option. But I guess, things to consider around insurance is the impact of natural disasters, the market, the alternative risk around financing, and what alternative financing options do we have? So if you choose not to insure or you wish to self-insure, do you need to borrow money to do that? Are you going to change your current strategy around not insuring 100%? Or, it's all of those questions need to be addressed. And it's quite a big question. We may not get to that answer straight away.
Thank you for that, Karen. So yes, that makes sense. The most immediate message of your paper is that the arrangements were made for the current year and they are now in place. And they have been budgeted for, which is always helpful to know. So I think we continue with your paper, please, the annual audit.
Sure, and I think we've just touched on some of this with the proposal to adopt the annual report on the 22nd of November. And the main reasons for the delay, and other councils in the district are experiencing the same issue and the same reasons, is resourcing, fair value assessments yet to be accounted for, and delays and impairments. So those are the three key reasons for the delay in the adoption, and a slight delay in the final audit that we're experiencing at the moment. We will be putting a message on the website to that effect. The statutory deadline is the 31st of October, and last year it was the 31st of December, so a slight movement out. And I believe Masterton are going for an adoption on the 29th of November.
Yes, it may be unpalatable. It should be unpalatable that we've got to go past 31 October. But we have to be also cognizant of what's in front of us. So in having made a decision that we do go into next month, the resource constraints, which is, I presume, our resource constraints, not the auditors, are we comfortable that with this stretched out adoption plan, Karen, that we can resource through and see this finished on the 22nd?
Indeed. So since it first came to light that we had some resourcing issues, we have engaged some additional external support to assist with writing the annual report and to also doing some of the financial adjustments that are required. Brilliant. So we have additional support behind the scenes working to make this happen on time.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Thank you. Right, water services reform. Big question, but still a big question. None the wiser from last meeting in August.
No, and when this was written, I think it was before the elections. So this is just really a note that we are still assuming this will continue, and we're told otherwise. This was really just to acknowledge that we had since received the debt validation confirmation, which had taken, I think that had been delayed by many months. So that finally came through, and that's attached. And it really is just for information purposes, because at this stage we're waiting to hear more. The NTU DIA are still continuing with the planned workshops up until Christmas. So it's really still business as usual for the water reform. So this is just information that we're still working on that piece of legislation as it currently stands.
How much level of work is this generating at this stage, Karen?
Initially, it started off quite a lot at the beginning of the year, particularly around the finance work stream and the pricing. I'd have to say it's leveled off over the last month or two, while I think they were waiting for the outcome of the election. So it was getting to, a few hours a week, probably half a day to one day a fortnight, depending on the demands and the RFIs that were coming through for information. So it was generating probably about 0.2 of my time, and as well as our water services advisor.
So we have a interesting situation where, in a sense, we have the established position of the legislation, which says there will be reform. We have the spectre, potentially, of an incoming government that has a different policy setting. That's why I asked the question about the work currently that is going on. I presume in response to the Act, there still is a level of work, albeit this chance within a month. Let's just stab a number of days out of the year that actually that might change, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Also, the NTU have offered to fund additional financial resources to work on the reform.
Yes.
Which is helpful. But when we don't actually know what the reform means, and it's even in its current form, it still has a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. It's quite difficult to work with. As you know, the entity G is scheduled to go live 1st of October 2024, which we're a part of, and that will have an impact on the LTP.
Yep. Okay. I don't know, Martin, you're probably involved in these discussions around the region. Is there anything from your perspective that you could add?
Well, I mean, I think the most what we have to anticipate, because both National and Act are committed to repealing the current, whatever it is, 10 waters, and replacing it. The question is replacing it with what? And it would appear that the most likely replacement model is not going to be like the current Wellington Water CCO, where, if you like, they contract services but don't own the assets. The likely alternatives are that councils can do what they like, etc. But almost certainly there's going to be some legislation that ring fences their water funding, the water assets. So the accusation probably is that many councils have allowed their water assets to run down in order to fund elsewhere, so that water services, I think, under National Act, are likely to be regulated in such a way that we would have to demonstrate that we are funding it properly and not sort of trying to save up. The question then is, because they've also said that we don't want to do anything that's financially unreasonable, what are the sort of transition arrangements? And they have talked about what they sometimes refer to as their city or regional deals, where they're likely to come in to maybe in our case, a wider region for the financial assets, or assistance can we provide subject to some conditions. And the other thing that National appear to be looking at very seriously is a different type of CCO, where in actual fact councils would combine and actually invest their assets, their water assets, into account. So that unlike current Wellington Water would actually own the assets that supply water throughout the region, and they would bill people directly, and they would be subject to Commerce Commission regulation, just as electricity providers are, etc., etc. So I think until whatever it is, the 27th of November, and we get the final results, and we get some certainty coming out of what a coalition looks like. We're only guessing to a certain extent. But having said that, I think it's easier, more predictable to guess what's going to happen with water than it is probably with an awful lot of the other things that the new parties have said they're going to be
Look, Martin, it's difficult in these circumstances, and thank you for that, that analysis, to anticipate a lot or speculate. I still think there's a need for all councils, that's why RAPA included, to be thinking through in parallel with their LTP, what actually do we got to do with our three wards? Because we've got the financials here. We know the challenges of things like our wastewater system here within Martinborough. We have to think, what is the best way for those to be developed, maintained?
I think that whatever National does, they're going to demand balance sheet separation of water assets. So, and Karen, no matter what happens, you're doing that anyway, aren't you? You're going to separate our water assets on our balance sheet to a separate column. So should it
they will be included in the first year.
But the national government has been, well, National Party, and have stated that they are going to demand balance sheet separation under any model that they come up with. So, you know, we might as well start looking at doing that anyway.
Yep.
As part of this, because it's going to happen. So why do things twice?
You record your assets separately in the balance sheet in the detail, so it's not really an issue.
Okay, look, no, thank you for that. I think we've probably pushed this as far as we can, but it's relevant that we keep our eye on the ball as far as reform goes. And I think what I'm trying to do, Alistair, is also encourage us to think, what do we want to aim for? I take your point, a new government may put parameters, people also indicated that. The question is how active and how willing are we in that, as in contrast, are we just waiting for something to happen to us? Russell.
Thank you, Chair. The other salient points to consider around the edge of the topic are Kaitoura held a online session in terms of LTP considerations and water, the future of water, along with considerations around central government and their 100 days. And within that, their best thinking of, they set as priority within the 100 days where water ranks amongst all those topics. So we, at the end of that session, run by Raymond Horan, Senior Advisor, trying to signal that there could be multiple options in terms of considerations for LTP going forward, whether we continue as we go or look at other things. He came up with, out of about 5, he briefly mentions the prospect of deferral, and meaning annual plan of 24-25, then a 2-year LTP, so all the different options.
Yeah.
Then he put a question out to councils to, as part of tracking the topic, give us some feedback as to what your council is doing. So Karen and I put our heads together and we gave that summative feedback as to where, including water, and we'll truck on with best considerations. But in terms of Kaitoura, they have the opportunity to lobby or convey the message of the struggle and or the challenge around water for different councils around the country. So that's their next step in terms of influencing for local government. But we wait to see on the whole thing.
Right, thank you. That's good input to keep current from a committee perspective as far as that's concerned. Thank you. I think that then leaves us with delegation policy, Karen.
Yes, so this was an update of our existing financial delegations policy. The current policy was a little out of date, so we've just spent some time reviewing it and brought it into sort of more applicable and relevant information than the previous policy, which hadn't been updated for some years. So this was on the list of policies required to be reviewed this year, and we have just brought it to both committees for review and any questions directed back to finance. And it just really sets out things much clearer and more purposeful in terms of what we do and what we expect of the different levels of delegated financial authority.
Karen, I think if you could humour me, mainly because I haven't been around long and when indeed, certainly not at the time the last delegation policy was created. Are you able to indicate to the committee, sort of in a nutshell sense, what are the key changes that have occurred as a result of the review? Perhaps Russell, if been through ELT, you may be able to help in that process as well.
Sure. I think the previous policy didn't set out a couple of key considerations around, say, the one-up rule, meaning, that you can go up to get an approval on expenditure. It didn't set out some of the key things around getting things written and approved correctly through a process. One of the, it also sets out what the limitations are under the Local Government Act, which was in the previous policy, but just reiterating that. It sets out again, it confirms temporary delegations, non-existent positions, or unclear or conflicting delegations. The delegation schedule sets out what levels, so we give a tier to who can do what, and I think this policy sets that up much more clearly on pages 8 onwards. That is much clearer to see what type of expenditure or financial matter is requested and who can do what. And I think if we look at the first point on page 8 is budgeted operating expenditure, what levels do we have across all tiers within the organisation and within council? So those are and also we cover things that may not have been clear before about what officers can do and what their limitations are or points are. One of the key things is just explaining that budget managers can have there's a tolerance level for how far unbudgeted expenditure can go, but at the end of the day, it is all confined to the annual plan or the LTP, and things outside of those areas are considered unbudgeted and have to go to whole of council. We explain more clearly the chief executive's delegations, and if they are absent, what the default is at that point. We also explain the treasury delegations, which were not perhaps clear before, and that also relates to new borrowings and just overall day-to-day management. We also provide clarity on who are the authorised signatories within council, within the staff, and just sort of generally budget control, long-term plan budgets, and the use of reserves is set out. And we also just talk briefly about fees and charges and the CCO and also the Rumahanga Roads contract and Wellington Water. And finally, for clarity in the appendix, we set out our current financial performance management system structure for reporting purposes.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Karen. The members, the request is for comment from us. And I just wonder whether you have any comments at all. Does this make sense? So I think Karen's page 8 is our page 58 to 59. Well, actually, I think it goes over 60, which clearly, 61 actually, which has, as you've indicated, Karen, the pictorial representation of what makes sense of what the planned delegations are. The question is probably as much from your perspective, does this make sense, both as to who is signing and also for the quantum of that actual delegation. So perhaps I'll just pause there and see whether folks have a particular view on that or comment to make at this stage. We're wanting to have a balance here between administrative efficiency and allowing management and staff to get on with things versus not being so loose that actually, I should be careful when I say a delegation is loose. It's not, the sort of the direction I'm going in here with the fact that actually there is still reasonable tight control and accountability for the release of money from the organisation. Yes.
Not having that much experience in local government, but I went over this in quite some detail, and it does seem to make a lot of sense, Karen, in terms of, we do want the senior staff and the chief executive to be productive, but also it seemed about the right kind of some degree of risk control. I thought it looked excellent.
Thank you.
Kate.
Okay, any other comments from folk? Appreciate that, Kate.
It reflects the decisions were taken on previous council in terms of
Yeah.
the delegations that weren't in place for the chief executive. A couple of natural disasters that we went, oops, so we've done that. So we've got our current, and then in this council, putting in the delegations for the infrastructure committee, which is very good as well. So,
And the format makes
and format's
it
pretty
very
good.
clear.
Yeah. I mean, look, Russell, you're in the acting role, and I appreciate Genesis coming on board, but it's like I'm looking to the chief executive, a credible set of delegations for a CE.
Yeah, well, and to answer, just a comment and answer your question that you posed to Karen for councillors' benefit, the work that's been done on it has been one that brings forth greater transparency, the needed level of transparency, the need to be able to action stuff as things arise, and the delegations were in high need of review for a while. So I'd make those 3 points.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments, folk?
Charles, I can ask a question.
Sorry, Derek, this is, while it's a public session, this is for the committee, not for the member of the public to participate in the discussion. I apologise for that.
Just the ratepayers actually.
I didn't actually disagree with that, but I'm saying in terms of the formal rules, it is for committee members with advice from staff to have the debate.
Council
Be accountable for that.
set and encourages participation. One question.
Yes, but I'm afraid to say that this is not the time. You're welcome to ask questions, but this is not the time or the way in which to do it. Sorry, Derek.
Those of you actually.
Okay, and I look, sorry, without being rude, this is my meeting. And I would ask you please to desist from asking those questions. Right, we are in the process of trying to get to the end of the paper here. Anything else, Karen, before we look at the recommendations, please?
Just briefly, this is a draft policy, and we welcome feedback on anything further, and then we will make a recommendation to go to full council for the approval of the policy at the next meeting.
Okay, so if we just go to the recommendations, then it says inform and receive a draft. I think I guess I'm just trying to make this a bit more definitive for you. I think you've received comment and affirmation from the committee rather than just inform and receive. Would the committee be more inclined to say we have reviewed, made comment and recommend council approve the financial delegation? Correct? I think that would be better and it's more authoritative. We've done the review. So if we could say, here's what did I say, review and approve.
Sorry. You don't approve.
Constitution of the Finance Committee's already done a resolution this morning.
Mr. Anderson, I have my chief executive here to advise me. I don't need to hear it from the public. Right. I think we go back to the point, which is that we have reviewed the draft and we recommend the council approve the revised financial delegation policy. Delegation policy, it would have been brilliant. Right, so let's just check that. We received the draft financial results. I think we can do that. We have informed and received an update on the insurance premiums. Had a good chat about that. we've received an update on the final audit and the 22-23 annual audit. We have an action item, which is to ensure we are clear with actually that run through to the 22nd of November as to how particularly this committee can fit in and support that adequately. And we've been informed and received very helpful updates from a number of you around the water service. What's that change in the policy? So I'm prepared to move those recommendations. Thank you, Melissa. A second. Thank you, Alistair. Any discussion on the motions? There being none, I'll put them. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that conversation. Right, democracy and engagement update. I think probably, Amanda, that's a chance for you to come to the table and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Chair. This is just our standard report to assurance. I think there's some information on the long-term plan. Just a note that the timeline has been populated further since this point. I looked at the version and the version control isn't quite up to date. So that's a little bit thin. It's much more full than that. There's been a number of deliverables that we've already, as you all have participated in, a number of workshops, an environmental scan, lots of discussions around setting the community outcomes, and we've begun to confirm the groups of a review of service levels. And obviously Karen's talked about some of the key financial strategies and policies that she's been working on and getting through as we go, including the rating review. We talked last time about the significant risk register, and we have put the risk register as it currently stands in the appendix, and we've got a bit of a conversation happening after this to think more in a bit more detail about how risk is described. We've done a number of policies with Carterton and Masterton, and we have powered through a ton of policy updates over the last few months, leading up into Katie's departure, so that we're getting much closer to our policies and bylaws being up to date. We're not quite there. I think we're at about 72%. The representation review that Nikki and Leanne particularly have been working on, the focus at this point in time is the Māori seat. That will come to council for decision in November. We've got some staffing issues that
So can I just ask a question on that?
on the representation review.
Is that a decision to say yes to a seat or not to a seat? Or is, okay, so when are we going to go out and actually have conversations on the marae? Or, I mean, when are we going to do that from a councillor perspective so that we can go out and engage with the community and say, this is what it looks like? Because right now, I'm going to vote no, because I haven't had a conversation with the community, say, what do you like? I haven't been down to Papawai Marae to say, this is the options. What do you at Papawai Marae think?
The legislation's been updated and it's given very clear direction that iwi and Māori are to be consulted with.
I understand you're doing it as officers,
Yep.
but we are the decision makers. When do we get to consult with the community?
No requirement for consultation.
You're not listening to what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying that I'm not going to make a decision in the affirmative of this until I've heard from the community in which I've been elected to represent on this. And that is, how do I go about saying, can I have a meeting at Papawai with the residents of Papawai, for example, who are the large stakeholders in my ward? How do I have a conversation, or where do I have the conversation, or how do we have the conversation so that I can be advised by the community that which we represent as to what are their views? This is not a personal view of whether I want to say yes or no to it. I've got to be informed, and to do that, I've got to actually go out and listen to what the public got to say. So when are the public who are going to be influenced by this, and mainly it's going to be local Maori, and it may not be the same. They may not have the same. I don't know because I haven't had the conversation. They might not have the same view as the Maori Standing Committee, perhaps, and they certainly may not have the same view as we know from the iwi leaders in Masterton, because we know that we saw that 2 years ago. So how are we going to do that? You know, the time frame has been compressed very, very quickly. So where am I going to have the opportunity to have those conversations? But right now, I don't have a paper or definitive outcome of what is being proposed to take to them and explain what that means.
Just ask a question of you, Alistair. So if Amanda's wider team are doing that engagement with local Māori, and I presume that would come to council as a paper like any other decision.
The standing committee anticipate presenting to council.
And presenting. Do you still feel the need to have personally had that conversation? Like you,
Absolutely.
we wouldn't personally have conversations on necessarily other topics that come to us.
We do on everything. We go and sit out and we listen to what the public directly are going to say to us about our long-term plan, our annual plan, our bylaws, our rating review. Everything that we do, we have a one-on-one opportunity to listen to what the public got to say on it.
So are you saying you want to be involved directly with the consultation process or more of a presentation process?
Well, I want to have the opportunity to say to the public of the Wairarapa or South Wairarapa, here's what's proposed. What are your views? Like we do with every major decision we take. And that means me sitting at a table like I do for the long-term plan, the annual plan. You know, I can, if Warren wants to get hold of me, he can get hold of me, but he hasn't had the opportunity because he hasn't seen what's presented. And we're talking about voting on this in how many weeks? 3 weeks. So, you know, I haven't even seen the paper. So if somebody from Papua rings me and says what's going on, I can't give them anything at this stage. And we want to make a fundamental change in how our representation is done. I think we're compressing this in such a way that the people who may well want that, now granted they might not, you know, I've sat at the table many times and nobody's turned up, but sometimes they do. We have to be able to say, we've given you that opportunity.
So we sought legal advice and expert advice on whether or not we had to consult publicly, and it's not a requirement.
I know it's not a requirement.
We have no plans for councillors.
Sorry, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong though, but you have had sessions at the local marae on this topic.
Absolutely.
So you've engaged but not formally consulted.
And can I don't, through you, Chair, would it be possible to invite
I go for it.
the Māori Standing Committee?
You're welcome,
I don't know
Karen.
if you want to say anything. I'm sorry.
Yes, kia ora. Yes, there has been wide consultation within the Māori community because this decision actually affects the Māori community. There will be recommendations that the Māori Standing Committee will be able to present from the marae because we have members who represent the views of the marae. Does that help clarify things for the councillor?
I personally, I find it, I'm uncomfortable with having to make a decision of this magnitude without actually having an opportunity like we do with every other major decision that we take to hear the views of people. Now, I haven't got a predetermined view on this at all, but right now, until I have that opportunity to hear from people who this will affect, I don't know where to go.
Can I suggest that we take this conversation offline, Chair, and that I come to you and any other councillor that wants to talk to me about what we could do? What would that look like over the next few weeks?
So I've literally been thinking about ringing the chair at Poplar and saying, can I come down and set up a table and have people talk to me?
Well, I think that comes back to Amanda's wise. Thanks, Alistair. Your comments just make me interested actually in the legal view on the process. So I think this is something for outside the risk committee meeting. But look, thank you for voicing your concern and seeking clarification, Melissa, and your comments, Karen, about where the Maori Standing Committee will be placed at the end of this process. So that's helpful. There is obviously potentially a missing piece of the jigsaw here for Alistair, which would be useful to have offline. Okay.
Should I continue?
Yes, thank you, Amanda.
So it's just some policy updates that we've got in there. And I guess the other one, the final one on that is the official information request. So there's a bit of an update about the number of requests. It ebbs and flows, obviously, depending on what's out, what kind of issues are currently front and centre. Of note, at the last council meeting, there was the proactive release policy. Agreed. We've got some space on the website now, and Amy and I are in the process of getting ready to upload some of those documents this week. There's a little bit of work to do to redact personal information, any identifying information from those swimmers, but they'll be published within the next. That will probably have a process as we go of going through what's publishable, and we'll get that uploaded over the coming weeks.
Brilliant. Was there anything you wanted to say at this stage around the significant risk register?
I don't have any comment at this point. It hasn't been updated.
Right.
There needs to be some work done on it, and probably a workshop rather than.
Well, we will be picking that out this afternoon as we go, even though it'll be a short meeting. Okay, that's brilliant. Any questions for Amanda over the contents of? Yes. Sorry, I'm aware of your name.
Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca. Yes, you are. Sorry, that's right. You were the last. Why aren't you at the table?
Oh, because I'm not on the committee.
No, well, that doesn't matter. My view, as long as I'm not going against standing orders. Sorry, Rebecca. You should be welcome at the table as a member of council.
Thank you very much.
I always appreciate your time.
Great. So I wanted to follow up a little bit on the letter that I read out at the last risk insurance meeting and double that back to the risk register that we've got.
I wonder, Rebecca, we did make the decision that it was worthwhile considering that in PX. I wonder whether we shouldn't be doing it for this meeting. I'm open to engaging in our broader risk profile, which will include how are we going with our long-term planning and the quality of decision making within council. I wonder if we should allow time for an item in PX. That's okay with Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? A couple from me, Amanda. So it is a wee bit, and I know we should probably take your comments, Rebecca, offline, not offline, but in terms of PX. Is there the actual appendix with the LTP timeline? Our valid interest is actually, are there any barriers to effective planning? And I mean, just doing the bizzo.
Yeah.
Is this on track? Are you comfortable that we are getting through this work?
So I'm
giving you an open sort of blank page here if you want to have a crack here.
So I've got a draft to the governors of the LTP project, which is Martin and Rebecca, just outlining some risks that have shifted over particularly the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
So a change in government obviously is a risk, and the things that Karen talked to earlier around water reform and potential changes in legislation that might impact on our ability to meet LTP timelines. From a practical perspective, my team is at 50% capacity at the moment, with a number of resignations and a small restructure, and that in of itself is a risk. And we've had that as a risk in both in the LTP and in our significant risk register, that capacity internally, and you know, we've got several roles where we've only got one person performing a task, and if they leave, our ability to recruit quickly isn't great. And trying to find the right people with the right skill set to come in with knowledge and catch up very quickly is darn near impossible in this current climate. So that's something that's having an impact as well. And I think Karen would share we talked about it ELT this week.
Yep.
That's hence I started drafting an email to that effect. I don't know if you want to add anything, Karen, to my comments.
Just that internal resourcing is an issue for the project, particularly Amanda's team. And with the mini restructure, that has had an impact on our ability to get some things done. So, yeah, I just concur with you, Amanda.
So that makes me then want to look, Amanda, and I'm on page 78 of our agenda, where I'm making a broad assumption, and you may want to dispute me with that the events in the lead up to essentially, let's say, the start of October have occurred.
Yes.
And to that extent, you know, in terms of the program and the sort of line by line knock off of matters,
Yeah.
that generally we have been able to keep to that point, correct?
So mostly, one of the big things that's, that has impacted as a result of our vacancies in our comms space has been we haven't really done the external comms and engagement that we would have liked to have done. We have got some activities planned in that space, but it's having the capacity to write content, to pull together community engagement opportunities is really limited. That's the one space that I think is falling behind, and obviously it's a really critical one. We've done had some really good sessions with the community boards and the Māori Standing Committee. So I think they're all have asked lots of good questions. We had a couple of sessions with them, and obviously councillors have been participating in a number of briefings and workshops as well. So it's just that next step out into the community. So we're starting to be prepared for that broader conversation around what's the LTP looks like. That feels like it's at risk to me.
Yes, Karen.
Sorry, and can I just add to that? What I guess we didn't anticipate was the extra workload on the full rating review. So the full rating review and another consultation, and then some of the feedback. And also we've seen a 400% increase in Lagoimas. And depending on what it is we're consulting and where we're at in the process, we've seen a huge increase in the rating review Lagoimas. So those are the sorts of things that are impacting on us as well as resourcing to get things done.
I guess that gets me to it's too easy as a government to ask this, but you've mentioned this is being managed two ways. One, you've got the Rebecca and Martin group, you've got ELT considering this. Too easy to say it. What's the plan? And about that, I mean, clearly you're resourcing. I get it as a challenge, and no criticism, but the question is, what can we do about it? Because it would strike me that I take it, you know, we just say you're going behind with things like, in effect, community engagement. That is often a helpful precondition to finalising the draft. So I am interested, is there a plan B?
So I've just had one of my staff come back from leave overseas, and she's currently shared with another council, and she's got some capacity to do some extra hours. So I'm just looking at recruiting her for a few extra hours. My two staff who just resigned, one is working with us 1 day a week with negotiation, and the other one's working with us 1 day a fortnight to kind of hold some of those key pieces of work. So our Home Māori, for example, is a really critical role, and is one of the roles that we've recently lost, and that engagement with iwi in particular on the long-term is really critical, and we don't want to lose the traction that we've got in that space. So we've got some there's a little bit there, but it's not enough at this point in time. We've got ads out, I've got recruitment processes underway. We're actively asking questions in the community and doing all the things that you normally do with recruitment.
Yeah, the dreaded C word, consultants.
Yeah.
You know, in this position, I mean, we've heard from Karen how with the financial aspects we've found the ability to be able to fund a consultant.
Yep.
Is this one that we should be trying to pull out the sort of stock, who I imagine are easier to get?
Yep.
Than trying to integrate at this stage a full-time employee.
Yep, so we've got, we had somebody come in at the last minute and help us do some work on the annual report, a writer, so a local government document writer, and I've begun having conversations with her to help us prepare the consultation document as one aspect that is bundled up into something and not super expensive.
Yeah.
To help us. So I've got a meeting with her on Friday to talk about next steps. So absolutely, we're looking at all our options, creative.
Yeah,
and within hopefully.
Yeah, well, I'd like to be sounding more simple. I'm empathetic. I hope I could suggest a solution to you. I'm just trying to perhaps why raise potentially external resources. 22nd November suggests that we have those financial forecasts. The forecasts to be meaningful, they've got to have a credible set of asset planning.
Yep.
You know, I'm telling you how to suck eggs here, Amanda. And I'm thinking to the council, so I'm looking at you, Rebecca, I'm looking at you, Martin. We need to enable you to deliver on this. You're saying it's a high risk, and I'm just wondering, have we got enough attention? Well, that sounds terrible, but I'll put it this way. Have we got enough response to that risk that is not, sorry, it's not a risk, it's actually an event, it's crystallised. We've got a lack of resource.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things in that space. We're about to get a new CE.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those situations that cascading number of dominoes have been.
Yeah.
And do what you can do. Like, I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a pot of gold. I don't have. No. Sorry, no. I don't want to. I don't want to sound like I'm blaming you. I don't feel like just really trying to reflect for the ears of the rest of the committee. Is there something here that we need to support or encourage to enable this resource gap to be overcome? Because 22nd November is the right time for that financial set of financial forecasts. Your plan to talk with the community. Yeah. We had that in the last, well, you know, with you, Alistair, as well, makes a lot of sense. And they're critical. So I'm just wondering, Melissa.
Sorry, I was just, you and I have talked a lot about ways that councillors can step into that engagement and communication void, I guess. Yeah. Better word. Are we at a point now, given our timeframes, given the criticality of the conversation that needs to be had, where actually we need to start putting some of that in place, where we, the councillors, take a far greater responsibility for the engagement that happens, particularly around LGP?
Yes, that would be great. I think the thing is that we'd need to have really clear key messages so there was some consistency.
Exactly.
And, you know, some questions, because I think that's the point that we're at the moment. I don't think we're in a position to go out to the community and say it's this or that. We're at a position where we're going to have some options, and we're going to have some critical questions for our community. They're likely to be in these kinds of spaces. So it would be really good if you started to think about what you think our priorities should be in these spaces.
So further to that, would it be helpful outside of this committee meeting to have a further conversation about how we councillors can work with you, the officers, to start getting that right messaging happening.
I think that would be really helpful, and I'd really encourage the Māori Standing Committee and the community boards to be part of that as well. They've really been clear with me, I don't know what they've said to you, about their willingness to be in that space and to be part of that conversation.
Great. No, look, thank you, Melissa. That's positive. Committee like this should always be prepared to look at issues in the face, but it's also nice to try and think there could be a solution. So look, I think you've well characterised the risk around this. Russell, I think, I mean, I hear the Janice thing coming down. She's only one person. It probably has a broad range of issues. The chief executive will be a lot of skill in this area. I suspect we need to make certain that underneath you and Janice, there is still the right level of resourcing. So, Russell, I think that's something which needs a response, but it's outside the cycle of a audit and risk committee. So I'm conscious that it should be something that is kept for a different committee or council. Rebecca, I think you wanted to say something.
It's just a query, I guess. If the team is running at 50% capacity, that suggests that there would be some wiggle room in the remuneration budget. Would it be appropriate to say to commit to a pause on that hiring and reallocating that budget for consultants during this time when everything's
That's what we're doing with the writer. So so I haven't recruited into the comms roles yet, and I would like to have a think about what those roles are before we take steps. So that's where the writing budget is coming from, with savings that we've got in that space at the moment.
Just seems at the moment that there's never going to not be work, but at the moment it seems like a very heavy acute workload that may be a bit of an emergency plan to have enough access to consultants over this period. Would be.
Thanks, Rebecca. I do agree with your view. So that's a chance for some solutions there, which I think need to have a level of focus. Okay, as I said, I think the risk thing there, the only other thing that I wanted to raise a question over, perhaps it was more an observation. And I just want to note, I am very interested in actually how the Murray seat consideration, representation review goes. Again, that's outside directly this committee, but I would encourage that outside committee discussion and clarity on process for us. The Ombudsman one. I did notice, Karen, your comment about the rating and review Legoimas, which is helpful because that actually explains, when I looked at that list, I thought, well, that's interesting. And that actually that's coming down the line. Amanda, possibly because two of my other engagements were part of the review of the Ombudsman, you'll realise that today he put out, today he put out a report on particularly workshops. Conscious that we're about to go to a workshop. Amongst all the madness and the load, it would be well worth a read on that.
I've looked at the recommendations and I've sent out.
Were you in front of me then? Other than, of course, I looked at the recommendations for my two other engagements.
I sent out an email to councillors today, I think, or yesterday, just noting. And we have taken records of all our workshops of recent months, knowing that this is something that would likely come as a result of this report. When we consider workshops, I always go to the chair of that workshop and ask, is this public or not? And we have a discussion about that. One of the things that we would probably need to show would be putting our workshops on our website as part of our agenda timetable. We don't always know in months in advance. You know, in a meeting, an action will be, could we please have a workshop on some more, or a briefing on that. So that would require my team taking the time to note those briefings and workshops, and then publicly notify them when we can in the timeframes, and then putting the information available on the website and whether it's open or not. And the reason for it not being open. But we've kept records of all our workshops, and including attendance, and those workshops could be made, that information in the past could be made available.
Well,
so we've been looking.
Well done. No, well done.
Thanks, Amy.
I just reflect, Amy, that the two audits that I have observed were reasonably tough audits. And quite rightly so from the Ombudsman. And look, it's difficult, and I'm not saying I'd want to argue against his findings. It does give cause, I think, for all local government to reflect about our transparency. Okay, that's brilliant. So can we go to the resolutions then, please? Which is that we receive the Democracy and Engagement Update Report. There's a bit of action there, potentially stuff that doesn't, well, it will eventually get reported back here, Amanda, but I think actually the recommended actions and follow-up are ones that, you know, need to be dealt with internally long before our next regular quarterly meetings. So I think with that, if I can encourage you to do whatever the steps are with colleagues in the room, with Russell and the ELT, I'll leave that in your hands. Is that okay?
Yep.
Brilliant. So I'll move from the chair that we received a Democracy and Engagement Report. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Melissa. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Can we just look at, I think our final open item, which is the action item list, and to date there, I'm not going too far past, am I? For a second, I'm over the page. Anything, Amy, to report on this? Or whoever else is going to report to it?
Haven't had any.
Okay, we've had no other update. So let me just check. This is to explain rating costs, including the finance report, and whether all claims will have been requested or actioned. Possibly seems reasonably straight.
Be sure Tim said
matter of
and
time, right?
I'm quite sure Tim has come back and said they're up to date as much as he can be.
So you received an email?
Sorry?
You received an email?
No, but in his last presentation, we were talking about it. So in terms of where we were, he's certainly part of the LTP.
Perhaps it can be dealt with off on a say offline sense. Perhaps that could be a check if sorry, again, I'm still trying to learn names. Tim's one of our staff members.
Yeah, Tim's our rating manager.
We can check pretty quickly with them. I think to give that email assurance to everybody would be just wonderful to get that off the list.
Very surprised if he hasn't.
Yeah, I would be too. Look, I think we've discussed a few things that need to follow up. As I've said, I think particularly ones around Amanda, they're ones that, because of time and pressure, need to happen outside. I don't think we should report that as part of our actions going forward. Can I move from the chair that we just received this second, please? Thank you, Alistair. I'll put the motion. We don't actually. We should have this will be a recommendation of this. We will pass on. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. It is now time for us to go into public excluded for the reasons that are there. And Rebecca, I think it's important to note that you would like to raise a matter about the planning committee, correct?
Yes.
Right. And I would think, given its nature.
Is it still?
Oh, sorry, you're suggesting that there?
It remain the same.
Yes, okay. Okay, that's fine. Brilliant. That's there. So from the chair, I'll put the motion. Do I have a second, please? Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
I wish to speak against it.
You're going to speak against it,
Yes,
Martin? Yeah, sorry, it's a fair point. I should have paused to let members make statements.
Sorry, are we in publicly excluded now?
No, we are on the debate of the motion to move in.
To move into public. Oh, okay.
Yep. So I have moved Melissa's second. And Martin, you're quite correct that actually I should enable there to be a debate on the motion.
Right, okay. Well, the point I wish to make is it is possible for councils and council committees to publicly or to exclude the public. But there are three requirements, and any resolution to exclude the public has to start by describing the general subject matter that is going to be considered. In other words, what is the topic? And the second thing is, why does that topic require a reason for excluding the public. In other words, why should the public be excluded from that? And the third thing you have to do is to show that your reason actually matches up with one of the grounds from the Local Government Meeting Act itself. So there are, in my opinion, and this is section 48, paragraph 3, 3 requirements that are required in order for a public excluded motion. And I'm not persuaded that the resolution we have in front of us includes all 3.
Would you like to respond to that, Rebecca?
As a person raising the issue, I'm happy for this to continue not in public excluded. But there may be personal and contentious issues raised that could be damaging reputationally for the council, and that maybe those conversations would be better to happen in public excluded. But I'll leave that up to you and the committee.
I would think that the Martin, I'm not necessarily directly certain what the item is. Because no, I think you want to raise it. You want to raise a new point on the PX, don't you, Rebecca? That was what I understood to be the case.
So I want to,
other than adopting the minutes.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to speak to the issue that I raised at the last meeting.
Yes, but as part of the adoption of the minutes, or are you wanting to raise an extraordinary item?
The matters arising from the.
Matters arising from, yeah.
We dealt with that, Martin, in PX out of respect, given some direct comments. So I'm persuaded that my argument would be that to deal with the minutes and to receive the action items, we should deal with that in PX. That doesn't stop, and we should, as a matter of course, consider whether any or all of that discussion should be made public and when that should be made public. So I think given that the minutes and the follow-up action were, whether you want to argue correctly or not correctly, dealt with in public last meeting on the 9th of August, Martin, I would suggest that we should go into public excluded, but with the express intent at the end of discussion, we make a particular resolution whether the matters discussed and disclosed should be made public.
I'm happy with that.
Okay, so I had a mover and a seconder. Martin, you've had your chance. Thank you very much. Do this seconder want to have any right of reply? Okay, so in that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those against? No. Martin. Martin, do you like your vote recorded against that? Yes, if you could note Martin's name against that. Thank you.
Just conscious Karen's online. I don't know if she's on.
She raised her hand.
Sorry, did you have a point you wanted to make, Karen?
No, Karen, not Karen.
Sorry, Karen. Yes, sorry.
Karen's still online.
I didn't see the vote. I just wanted to make sure that Amy had captured it.
So, vote against or for? Did she raise her hand to no or yes?
I didn't see it.
Sure.
Are you talking to me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was in favour.
Yeah, she's in. Okay.
Thank you.
So Martin's vote is the vote against. It's recorded. It means the motion is carried.
Okay, so good for him.
So you just go offline, please.